Hi there. It gives me great pleasure to talk about our topic today of you and me create society. What we've been looking at in 2022 is living everyday wonder. And in the month of July, we've already started talking about relationships. So it only brings us to this next topic that I want to talk about today is you and me create society. So take a look around at our society. And what do you see? What do you experience? And for those of you who watch the news, what's happening in our world? What's happening in our society? Whether our society is in our towns, the towns and the cities that we live in, whether it's in the county that we live in, the state, the country that we live in, or the world that we live in. However large or small you want to look at this, take a look at society, however you define that for you today, and look at what's happening. And then ask yourself, is it in alignment with your vision? Is this the society, the world that you enjoy living in? Now, if you do, since we're using technology, go ahead and type into the chat what you love about the society that you live in. And I also want you to type into the chat what the things are about society that don't fit your vision. Because I really want to take a look at all of the things that make up our society, or that make up our society that we like and that we don't like, right? Okay, so here's some of the stuff that comes up when I ask that question. Look at society, and then does it fit your vision? What fits your vision and what doesn't fit your vision? So of course, loving community, having beloved community, that works. Okay, got it. Having a center, a spiritual learning center like ours, where we get an opportunity to be in beloved community, that seems to be working well. It seems to be working well that our family units are operating and functioning really well. And okay, some of the things that are not functioning well, right? Are we proud to be American? We sing the songs of a land where we're free, except, right? Except, based on race, sexual orientation, if you have ovaries, gender. These are the things that are listed, right? That we're living in a society that does not fit our vision personally, and maybe even collective as spiritual communities, right? Where our principles are love and unity, which is really oneness. Our principles are divine order. And yet, what we find in our society, whether it's in our cities, our neighborhoods, our towns, our states, our country, or even globally, where folks are not honored, are not respected, are not valued based on our social identities. And so, if that's the case, how is it that we can actually create a society or a world that works for everyone? How can we actually begin to do that? Well, it's interesting because Ernest Holmes says this. He says, we cannot afford to hold personal animosities or enmities against the world for individual members of society. All such thoughts are outside of the law. Love alone can beget love. Love alone begets love. So it's interesting because on my wall I have like a simple formula for living, and one of the simple formulas for living is stop blaming other people. In other words, I get to take responsibility for creating my own life. And in our topic today of you and I, or you and me, create reality, or we create our society, how is it that I still continue to blame others? How is it that you continue to blame others? It's those politicians, it's those lawmakers, it's those people, it's them over there. And is it in fact you and me, you and I, that have created society? Now, I know, right? You don't necessarily agree that we've created this, because it's not necessarily what we envision and what we would like our world to be. But each and every time we blame others, each and every time we're pointing the finger, each and every time we're not taking responsibility for our spiritual practice and our prayer work, we are creating this kind of society that says, oh, hey, if you have ovaries, I'm sorry, you can't make decisions about your own body. Oh, if you're black or brown, oh, I'm sorry, you belong in jail and in prisons. Oh, and by the way, if you happen to be gay, bisexual, trans, there's no room for you in our society. If you are of a different race, a different religion, a different sexual orientation, a different height or weight, based on your body and what your body looks like, you don't belong. And when we make that okay, when we don't stand up, when we don't speak for love, because only love begets love, you and me are creating this kind of society. And if this is not okay with you, then how do we together begin to create a society and a world, right, that works for all? And we have to begin locally, so local that it begins with the self. Now, I know many of you have heard the term that society changes when the old guard changes. Now, for those of us in our community who might be of the sage age, those folks who have lived many, many decades, we're not talking about killing you off. We're not talking about can't wait for you to croak. We're actually talking about when the old guard dies off, meaning the old way of thinking, the antiquated way of thought, when that guard, which is our systemic beliefs, that is what is called our race consciousness, when that race consciousness dies away, when that is no longer part of the living, breathing part of our consciousness, things change. So when I talk about the old guard, I am talking about the opportunity for us to begin to change our thinking. And of course, as you continue to hear week in and week out, and as you continue to study and become a metaphysician, you will hear the words of Ernest Holmes: change your thinking, change your life. This idea of COVID and of illness and sickness, the moment that we change and we let that old guard die off, it is in that moment that things begin to change. It is that moment where we begin to build anew. Now, I know I've heard it also said that, we have to, get in there and infiltrate that is a school of thought, and to begin to change the minds and consciousness of the people who are in our, in our policy making our laws. I get that, and I hear that. It's interesting in 365 days, what our book has to say. It says you can no more have an individual mind than you can have an individual ownership of the principles of mathematics or harmony or of beauty. So in other words, it's not only your individual mind, because your individual mind is actually in the mind of God. We are contained in spirit, right? And because of that power and presence, we create. And we create here in our human experience that which we experience. So because we are such powerful beings, we are connected. That's the unity. That's the oneness. So as I awaken, you awaken. As you awaken, I awaken. This is the awakening of humanity to its spiritual magnificence. And it is to this that I'm speaking of. Now, Ernest Holmes also says that we can't afford to hold personal animosities, right? We already saw that he said that we can't afford to have these personal animosities against people like our politicians or those people or those people. But in fact, what he says is this. You come into this life subjective to the race consciousness and to your own environment. You unfold your own personality and begin to create a new subjective thought. So it is up to us to be our own people, but to also hold a vision, and to have such a vision is that same vision that John Lennon talked about when he said, if everyone demanded peace instead of another television set, there would be peace. But still, what are we demanding? What are we calling forth? What are we seeing? And when we don't see that which we want, why are we not up in arms? And I'm talking about spiritual arms, not physical arms, not guns or violence, but in our spiritual practice. Why are we not then so deep in our spiritual practice and then inviting others into our spiritual practice that we actually begin to notice and to see and to experience a world that works for all? That you and me actually do create society based on what we want. Now, a lot of people who practice the spiritual bypass, they go around saying, "Oh, everything is good. Life is good." Yeah, life is good. I'm a proponent. I say life is good because my life is good. I'm creating that within my own world. But as I create that within my own world, I actually see what else is happening and what else is going on. And so it drives me deeper. Sometimes, like my mentor, Michael Beckwith, says that the news is our prayer request. It's the prayer request when we see that individuals and a collection of groups of people are not being treated equally, that we're not seeing the value in people based on these social identities. And yet what I know is that each and every one of us is the unique, unrepeatable, magnificent way that God shows up. So it's interesting to hear things like, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. I'm going to read that again. There is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. So what does this mean? Am I just sticking my head in the ground thinking that everything is just going to be okay? Or do I need to be proactive? Like Buckminster Fuller says, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete? What is the model that you're building? Because you and me create society. What if we had a peace force instead of a police force? What if we had a love fest? What if people actually came together from various backgrounds, ages, races, sexual orientations, ethnicities, religions? What if we came together and actually created something new instead of fighting what's existing? What if we did that in our spiritual practices? You know, our spiritual practices that we talk about every week: meditation, treatment, journaling, visioning. Who might we become if we actually dived deep into a new spiritual practice, into a regular spiritual practice that could afford us in really creating something new? That instead of talking about folks and backbiting and gossiping, that we actually lifted one another up. Beloveds, I still believe that we are creating our society. And I'm committed to engaging in my spiritual practice so that what is being created actually matches a vision of a world where we are one. Because that is the spiritual truth of who we are. The question is, are you with me? Are you with me? So each and every Wednesday night in Long Beach, California, actually each and every Wednesday at noon Pacific in Long Beach, California, we're meeting for meditation. If you'd like to really get steeped in your practice, reach out to us at Vida Spiritual Learning Center. We have practitioners and ministers available to help you individually and to help us collectively as a community really dive deeper into the spiritual practices that help us create this world that works for all. I gotta tell you, I love my life, and I know that I would be in love with it if we had less crime, less hatred, less bullets, if we had less homophobia, less ethnocentrism, if we had a world where we really looked out for one another and lifted each other up. Like Dr. King said, I may not get there with you, but we are the ones to create the society to bring about that change. And it's never too soon to start, and it's never too late to start. So commit with me to engage in daily spiritual practice that awakens us to our spiritual magnificence, where we can look at all humanity, all plant life, all animals, everything as the life of God, and honor it and work with it in collaboration to build a world of peace, of love, of oneness, of joy, of abundance, where there's no hunger, where people are fed, where the prosperity, everyone gets an opportunity to live their best life, whatever that looks like for them. I'm interested in creating that, and I hope you'll join me in creating that as well. Let's go into prayer. How grateful I am in this moment to recognize the one power, the one presence, the one life that has created everything out of itself. Therefore, my life is the unique, unrepeatable way that loving, living spirit expresses in human form. I know loving presence and living spirit. And God, I know that this power is love, is joy, is peace, it's abundance, it's oneness, it's eternal. And because that is the true truth of loving spirit, of living spirit itself, it is my truth. That which is true of God is true for me. So as I embrace this and know this, and as I contemplate this, and as I actually bask and marinate in this specific truth, then I have to know that it is the truth for each and every one, for all of life. That all of life is the unique, unrepeatable, magnificent, powerful way that God shows up in human form, in animal form, in plant form, in our ozone, in our world, in our galaxy, that this world is the life of God. And bringing it closer to home, I'm simply knowing that it is the truth for each and one of our community members at Vida Spiritual Learning Center. And that each member and those who consider themselves members and those visiting and those who are a part of our spiritual community, that we are awakened to this spiritual magnificence that our life is the life of God. And that from this place of power, from this place of oneness, from this place of peace, that which is true of God is true for each and every one of us. Therefore, we simply call forth that the love of God, the peace of God, the abundance of God, the health and wholeness of God, the oneness of God is expressed and experienced in each and every one of us. And that as this is the truth, that we experience it and that we can then express it. That it is our experience and that it is our expression, and that we see all life as the unique, unrepeatable way that God shows up, and that we honor all life, and that we value all life. And that as we say, I see the sacred, I hear the sacred, I speak the sacred, all life is sacred, that we honor the sacred life that is God, that is our very life. So I'm simply knowing that everything is unfolding beautifully and magnificently. Simply knowing a deeper commitment, a deeper walk with spirit, to know beyond the shadow of a doubt my oneness with all life. Because I pray believing it is done, I simply release this word now into the activity of the law, knowing that it is done in the mind of God. Therefore, it is done in, through, and as our reality. For this and so much more, I give thanks. I let it be so. It is so, and so it is, and now it is. Amen. Be well, beloveds.